On a Tuesday evening, she expressed her desire for solace as I entered the kitchen with 2 steaming cups of tea. "Could you merely provide some space? You're persistently overstepping," she said. I placed both cups on the counter without responding, simply gazing at her. She was already prepared to depart, adorned in a light coat and her preferred earrings. She announced she required fresh air, stating the apartment felt confined, and it was I who made it feel more constricted. The door shut quietly. A moment of stillness ensued before I picked up my cup and consumed the tea alone. It seemed I'd been doing so frequently lately to avoid confronting the growing silence. We had resided in that Brooklyn Heights apartment for 6 years, located on the 4th floor with ample light and a picturesque view of the water from the right window. It was a peaceful existence, perhaps a bit too tranquil. Consistently indeed, yet it proved effective. I assumed it worked. On a certain Tuesday night, there was an unsettling feeling, not louder but just odd. I waited an hour, then put on my coat. We had met at a print fair in Manhattan approximately 9 years ago. She was examining letterpress cards, tracing the raised ink as if it were alive. I mentioned that I created such items for a living. She chuckled and said, "So you're the one who still values paper?" I became attached to that laughter. For quite some time, things were splendid, exceptionally so. She flourished in her styling career while I maintained the print shop. We had a cadence. Tuesday nights used to be our sanctuary, takeout from the Montague Thai restaurant, mediocre television, and no obligations. I believed it was enough for both of us. However, over the past year, the rhythm seemed to shift. She began working later and started expressing her need for more, whether it was energy, light, or some unspecified thing she felt she lacked. I attempted to keep pace but brought home flowers only once, which she found the apartment already cluttered. I proposed a weekend trip upstate, to which she declined, citing clients. I stopped suggesting and heeded her request for space. A new neighbor moved into the top floor unit approximately 3 months ago. I encountered him once near the elevator, tall with an easy smile, seemingly unhurried in life's pace. She spoke of him once, mentioning his ownership of a nearby wine bar and finding him interesting. She only used the word interesting for people she wished to discuss further. I did not probe for more information. I justified my silence by telling myself I was being reasonable. However, being a composed individual allows one to rationalize almost anything when presented in an appealing manner. She needs space, understood. She is creative and prone to restlessness, characteristics she has displayed since before. I allowed her space, hoping she'd return. That was my mindset. Therefore, I ceased questioning her destinations, stopped sending messages while she was away late, and abandoned waiting for her. I presumed this was what she desired: reduced burden, less of my presence. In truth, I was simplifying matters for her. For 3 nights a week, she began visiting the rooftop. Always past 9, always attired as if heading somewhere important. I'd hear the door, the elevator, and remain seated at my drafting table, feigning work. That month, I did quite a bit of pretending. One day, I ascended to the rooftop myself, stating I sought fresh air. She smiled, but her body subtly shifted, slightly, enough to be noticeable. She inquired if everything was all right. I affirmed, and she immediately relaxed excessively. A week later, I discovered a fancy wine glass in her coat pocket when I took it to the cleaners. Not ours. Left it on the kitchen shelf without a word, realizing later that I should have spoken up then. It was my error. The wine glass remained there for 4 days, untouched. She never commented on it, nor moved it. Instead, she walked past it every morning as if it had been there all along. This irritated me more than the glass itself. On the 5th day, I picked it up and examined it under light. It was of high quality with a heavy base, typical of a place that values wine. A faint trace of lipstick near the rim matched her shade. I returned it to its original spot. In the same week, Danny, a man who runs the front desk at my store and knows everyone in the neighborhood, mentioned a wine bar on Henry Street. He said the owner had recently renovated the place, adding a rooftop extension for private tasting events. He detailed everything about it and commented that the owner was doing well for himself. Then he looked at me and asked, "Aren't you the one who said your neighbor owns that place?" I replied that I knew little about him. Danny gave a nod and resumed his work. That evening I drove home, pondering over her use of the word interesting, pondering about how she would only dress up to sit alone on a rooftop, pondering about the glass. I parked in the garage and stayed in the car for some moments. Upon reaching upstairs, she was already back from wherever she had gone. Her hair appeared slightly different, overly relaxed for someone who'd just been out. She kissed me on the cheek and inquired if I was hungry. I replied that I wasn't. On that Tuesday night, I waited for an hour exactly after she departed. I donned my coat, took my phone, and climbed the stairwell instead of the elevator, it being quieter. The rooftop door was propped open with a brick. It always caught funny. Everyone in the building knew this. I stepped onto the terrace and scanned around. The chairs were empty, a few potted plants here and there, the water appearing dark and still in the distance. Then I looked down towards the top floor apartment, his apartment. Inside the illuminated room, the room was bathed in warm yellow light, curtains only partially closed. She was present, standing near him, laughing at something, her hand on his arm. Not a casual touch, not neighborly. I remained there for approximately 30 seconds, long enough. I retrieved my phone and snapped a picture through the curtain gap. The image was clear enough, capturing their faces, her hand, the wine glasses on the table behind them. 30 seconds was all that was required. I did not knock, I did not shout, I did not make any grand gestures. Instead, I simply retraced my steps down the stairwell, entered our apartment, and settled at my drafting table. To my surprise, my hands remained steady. I made one call with my phone, reaching my attorney. We had known each other for 12 years. He answered on the third ring, even at that hour. I informed him I wished to initiate a discussion. He indicated he understood. Upon hanging up, I activated my tablet, displayed the photo in the center of the table, and then packed a bag. I drove to the print shop located approximately 10 minutes from my apartment, in Dumbo beneath the bridge. Inside, there's an old couch in the back office along with a coffee maker and bathroom, making it suitable for overnight stays during crunch times. The morning shift workers wouldn't find it unusual to see my car outside. Upon arriving, I opened the door, turned on the backlights, and sat at my desk without sleeping. Instead, I listened to the idle presses and contemplated my recent words. My error was in forgetting the tablet at home. While part of me thought I did so deliberately, hoping she'd notice it and understand, the truth is I wasn't thinking rationally. Driven by a sense of cold determination, I acted too hastily. What I failed to anticipate was her reaction. I presumed she'd call or cry, waiting for me. However, I didn't consider that she would return upstairs, which she did unexpectedly. At about 2 a.m., my phone vibrated with a text instead of a call from her. The message read, "We need to talk." I chose not to reply. After 20 minutes, another text arrived, asking, "Where are you?" Following this, there was silence for a considerable period. I spent the time making coffee, observing the bridge lights through the store window, and pondering what she had been up to during that silence. A few days later, I learned about that night from the building superintendent, Ray, not directly from her. He's known for observing everything and talking to everyone. It wasn't idle gossip he shared. It was information delivered casually, as if assuming I already knew. She had returned to the top floor and knocked on her neighbor's door. Ray had been performing a late-night check of the hallway lighting and heard the entire exchange through the door. He didn't catch every word, but enough to understand that she was distressed, shared about the tablet, told him her husband had seen it, and confided that she didn't know what to do next. Ray mentioned there was a brief pause before he heard the neighbor respond. Peaceful and manageable, as Ray described it, like someone facing a small hassle. He assured her everything would be all right, that such situations often resolve themselves. Following this, the sound of a bottle being opened was heard. No, they'd solve it together. No, he had her. Just wine and a soothing voice to comfort her. Later, around 3, she returned downstairs alone. When Ray shared this with me in the lobby, holding his clipboard, he briefly met my gaze before looking away. He remained silent, yet his unspoken words were clear. She was seeking support, but ended up carrying the burden by herself. I was one step ahead. I arrived at the apartment Wednesday evening. She sat at the kitchen table, both hands clutching a cold coffee mug. The tablet was still there, its screen dark. She hadn't touched it. She looked up when I entered. Her eyes bore a fatigue unrelated to rest. Placing my bag by the entrance, I moved towards the kitchen, filled myself a glass with water, remained standing at the counter, sipping it. She uttered, "I'm unsure where to begin." I replied, "You don't have to." This statement appeared more impactful than any other possible comment. Her gaze fell to her mug. I wasn't indifferent about it. I wasn't putting on a show. I simply had no requirement for an explanation. By then, I'd consulted my attorney on 2 occasions, gathered and compiled 6 years of combined financial documents, acquired a lucid image of what the forthcoming months would entail. I'd spent 2 consecutive nights in the print shop, transforming sorrow into paperwork. It was during this ordeal that the ground beneath me changed position. She inquired if I was departing. I informed her that I had initiated the process. She didn't object, didn't plead. Instead, she simply nodded solemnly, as if some internal aspect of her had foreseen this turn of events and lacked the strength to outrun it. The mug remained clutched as I ventured to the bedroom to gather additional items. Upon glancing at the kitchen shelf, the wine glass with the lipstick mark had vanished. She'd relocated it at last. The ensuing 3 weeks sped by in a manner typical of trying times. She resided in the apartment, while I stayed at my brother's residence in Carroll Gardens, just 20 minutes away. Our interactions mainly transpired through lawyers, with occasional messages regarding logistics. Questions about who would claim what, how to handle our joint account, and if she wished to keep the artwork on the hallway wall that we had acquired together at a street fair in Red Hook 4 years prior were among these. She expressed no desire for it. I retrieved the artwork during a Thursday afternoon when I was certain she had clients. The print shop provided a sense of tranquility, as I worked longer hours and took on tasks that could have been postponed to the following week. I remained there until the machines ceased operation, and the shops were saturated with fresh ink aroma, and the bridge outside was bathed in orange light under the night's cover. Everything was as predictable as required at this place. On a Friday, my lawyer informed me the paperwork sailed through smoothly, without any complications. He mentioned she hadn't disputed anything substantial. After thanking him and ending the call, I pondered over her decision not to fight it, uncertain whether it made things easier or just quieter. Then, Danny entered the back office and placed a new order on my desk from a local restaurant needing menus reprinted. The location was Henry Street. I checked the address against Danny's gaze. He nonchalantly asked if he should pass it. I glanced at the order form for a while, then set it down and said we'd handle it. The menus turned out well, good stock and crisp print. It's the kind of job that appears effortless but demands attention to detail. I packed them myself, loaded them into my car, and drove over to Henry Street on a Wednesday afternoon. The wine bar was more upscale than anticipated. Walnut-toned interior, well lit, a place that exudes a clear identity. At the entrance, a youthful lady accepted the delivery, confirming its accuracy from her notepad, complimenting its appearance. I was about to depart when the door behind me swung open. It was him, just as I recalled from the elevator. Calm, unrushed, as if time itself belonged to him. He cast a glance at the box I carried, then at me, causing a subtle change in his expression. Sufficiently noticeable to indicate he recognized me. "Nicely done," he commented. I replied, "That's what we do." He acknowledged with a nod. A brief silence ensued, lasting barely 3 seconds but feeling prolonged. Then he re-entered the establishment. I climbed into my vehicle and sat in quiet reflection. A few days ago, Danny had mentioned that the bar was seeking a regular print supplier, menus, wine lists, seasonal editions. A consistent contract with decent volume. I'd already made up my mind to accept it. The man had just offered his handshake and praised the work. Unexpectedly, I had just been employed by him. Leaving the office behind, I hopped into my vehicle and ventured onto the street. The deal was finalized on a chilly Thursday in October's late phase. I affixed my signature to the last document, exchanged pleasantries with my lawyer, and stepped out onto the pavement. A bite of autumnal wind from Brooklyn's waters filled the air. I remained rooted to the spot for a brief while without so much as stirring. No specific reason prompted this pause. I was merely standing there. The apartment was hers, the joint assets were divided fairly, and I gained sole possession of the print shop. There was no opposition. My lawyer claimed the process was as uncomplicated as these scenarios tend to be. I believe she simply desired an end to it all. I shared her sentiment. Once back in Dumbo, I parked under the bridge, my usual spot, and stepped into the shop. Danny had taken charge of the morning operations. The rhythmic hum of the press could be heard from the entrance door. This familiar mechanical beat, which I have listened to for 12 years, resonated identically as it always did. I placed my coat, brewed some coffee, and settled at my workstation. Atop the stack of tasks was a fresh one. A quaint Brooklyn-rooted independent magazine requested our services for their winter edition. Quality paperwork, intriguing design, the type of assignment I genuinely appreciate. Flipping through the details, I found myself engrossed. My phone displayed an untouched text from her. Her name glowed on the screen. For a moment, I hesitated, then flipped the device over onto the desk. Instead, I focused on the order form. The machinery outside continued its rhythmic operation. Reliable and constant, just as it always had been, as it always will be. I appreciate your attention till the end. Share your thoughts in the comments. Stay tuned for more authentic and understated stories soon.